So, welcome to our Monday night show. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Ken Edmonds, and on this channel, I share information that's designed to help people that travel with challenges, travel better, enjoy their trips more, and avoid the pitfalls. Tonight's show, we're going to discuss the new guidelines, 49 pages of them. We're not going to talk about all 49. But there were some new guidelines issued by the European Union, and it was in conjunction with CLIA in the EU, which means that potentially we could see some of these same types of restrictions affect ships in the United States. And in fact, there were a couple of announcements today by NCL and Royal Caribbean about a panel of specialists, infectious disease, and a whole variety of different specialties that are collaborating with the organizations to try to put together guidelines so that cruising can resume. And the question is, after we look at these guidelines, are you going to want to cruise? And that's been a real hot topic for conversation, in the various forums, because these restrictions really are kind of restrictive. I'll put a link in the description to this actual document so that you can look at it and read it in more depth if you want. But it's entitled Interim Advice for Restarting Cruise Ship Operations. And I like the fact that it says interim advice, because if it's interim, that means that it's not necessarily a permanent change. We'll go through some of the restrictions. And by the way, do me a favor and let me know. I know Mary's here with us tonight. If you're watching it in the comments, please let me know where you're watching from. And I'd kind of like to get your feel. Mary and I have been in the chat for a little bit, talking about how we feel about these changes and what's potentially in store. I'd like to get your opinion as well. So please do me a favor. Go ahead, and I need you to put some comments in the chat if you would. So let me change to the first page. So, and let me pop that up on the screen so you can see it. I thought this was kind of interesting because it said that this is where mask use is strongly recommended. It said any area where interaction with others occurs and maintaining physical distancing, which is 1.5 meters, cannot be guaranteed. So in other words, if you can't guarantee that you'll stay 4.5 feet away from somebody, they're saying that you should be wearing a mask. And it talked about specifics here, walking and passing in narrow corridors, in elevators. And you think about it, on most cruise ships, it's going to be almost impossible to stay 4.5 feet away from everybody else on the ship. So they're basically saying that you need to expect, when you're not in your cabin, to wear a mask. And I can live with the wearing of a mask. I don't have a problem with doing that. It wouldn't be my favorite thing, but it's not necessarily one of those things that I want to do. But the question I would have is, what are they going to do for the people that refuse to wear masks? All we've got to do is look around the world today, and you see people that are refusing to wear masks when it's a requirement even under law. So, now we have a situation where some people will, some people won't, and what do you do about the people that don't? So that'd be my first question. Again, it talked about this time with the passengers. Again, the same kind of thing, that you can't stay 1.5 meters apart. Then you should wear a mask. That's what they're saying. And again, like I said, the mask is the least onerous of these requirements that are in this document. Shore excursions, there wasn't anything I thought were particularly a challenge there, except that you will, of course, have to meet the requirements of whatever destination you're visiting. So if a mask is required in the destination, then you got to wear your mask. They talked about trying to reduce the number of people on shore excursions, and limiting the quantity, and again, some of that's dictated by local responses, but some of it is the cruise lines guidelines as well. Again, that one's not bad. Well, I'm not sure about the value of the temperature screening because the odds of you getting off contracting the coronavirus and having a temperature when you get back on, is fairly low. So I'm not sure that I see a lot of value in that. So for those of us with limited mobility, this one's a challenge. It said passengers should be advised to avoid the use of the elevator. And you got to revise the maximum capacity, and then you still have the physical distancing guideline. So having been on a lot of cruise ships and a lot of cruise ship elevators, I'm not sure I've ever been on one where I could keep a 1.5 meters if there was another passenger on the elevator. So that becomes another challenge. And then part of the guidelines was they want them to basically clean them after every use. If you use a wheelchair, a walker, or a scooter, it's going to make traveling up and down the ship a real challenge. Yeah, I see your comment there, Mary. And we came back in the middle of March, and we've been self-quarantining at home since then. There's just no sense in taking a risk. The pool area was kind of interesting, too. I'm not going to read all this. Like I said, I'll give you a link to the document so you can look at it yourself. But it said that you should keep 1.5 meters between the chairs unless they are, people that are from the same cabin. So in other words, if there's 2 of you in the cabin, you can sit side by side. But most pool decks, that's going to severely limit the capacity of people on the pool deck. You think about how jammed together most pool decks are. And then there's still a scramble for who gets a place to sit. And now you've got to make sure the seats are all 1.5 meters apart. That's going to be a real challenge. And then it mentioned that the bathers are separated by a schedule or by different facilities for swimming and service for different groups. And there's quite a bit of talk in there about groups or cohorts of people doing things together. You think about assigned dining, for example. Imagine if everything you did on the ship for the whole time you're doing your everything on the ship, basically, you had to travel with the same group of people. I'm not thinking that's going to be a lot of fun either. Hot tubs. Small hot tubs, less than 6 cubic meters of water. I have no idea how big that size tub really is. Should be used only by bathers of the same household or the ones in the same cabin. So if it's a small hot tub, just you and your cabin mates, which means that you don't have to deal with overcrowding. But then again, who's going to be the hot tub police and enforce it? So that's part of my question. The other side is how big a scene is that going to cause when they do decide to enforce it? And and again, like I said, it becomes almost untenable. For the bigger tubs, you can have one person per 20 liters per minute of recirculation flow. But you can't have more than one bather per 4 square meters of water surface. So basically, you have to be able to stay 1.5 feet in every direction, I think is what that's going to work out to in the hot tub. And again, it's going to make them mostly unusable. I like the gym information as well. It was kind of, let's just say, interesting. First of all, they got to keep a record of anybody that goes in the gym. So you go to the gym, you get checked in, you get checked out. I have no problem with the hand washing and disinfecting. I think that's a great idea. 2 meters between the machines, I don't have a problem. But all touch surfaces need to be disinfected after each use. And that's going to mean not by the passenger, but the crew member. So that's if, depending on the gym and how active people are in using the gym, that's going to cause some huge backlogs. And plus, like I said, they have to know everybody that used it. So that's going to be a challenge. Though, like I said, that's probably maybe the least of the challenges. I'm not a gambler, so it doesn't really affect me, but the casino, basically you got to stay 1.5 meters apart from everybody in the casino. And they talked about signage and stripes on the floors and moving all the games around and, turning off some of the machines and all of these things to try to create create a safe environment. And I understand them wanting to keep people safe. If I was going to get on a cruise ship, I'd want to feel comfortable that I'm going to be safe. I just can't see myself paying right now to deal with the restrictions that they're talking about. So again, we think about the theater and the show venues. We were a little over a year ago in January. We were on the Breakaway, and they had one of the show venues, Sid Norman's Poorhouse, had a band that was dynamite, and you couldn't get an inch and a half away from people, much less a meter and a half away from people, because it was so packed. So how are you going to do shows and keep a meter and a half between everybody that's in there? Again, it becomes a very difficult situation and probably not nearly as pleasant as it could be. I love this with the kids club. First of all, no indoor kids clubs, or at least to the extent possible. And then you're supposed to maintain physical distancing. So again, we think about this. You've got the kids in a room, and they got to stay, 4.5 feet from everybody. That pretty much wipes out their opportunities to play and to do stuff. And here's where it talked about the cohorts that divide the passenger and crew into cohorts, and you basically divide it up into shifts, and they get schedule time for food, embarking, disembarking, and some onboard activities. And again, all of these things, I understand the rationale. And there are some things I didn't put in the slides that I thought were really important, because they're real aggressive about, if they think somebody's got COVID, you can't get on, which that's pretty much obvious. If you're over 65, which includes myself, my wife, she can go, but I can't. You got to have a note from the doctor saying that your health's good enough that you can travel. But the one thing that they have imposed that is, I think, very good is enough space to isolate passengers that they suspect have COVID, which has been a problem in the past. Now they basically are going to set it up where they can have isolation wards. And the other thing is they get to port, they get them off the ship. And the one thing everybody's been very concerned, and it would have been my biggest concern, is being stuck on the ship. I mean, I don't want to be on a ship and not be able to get off the ship. That was what happened with the Diamond Princess and some of these other ships. So all of these things are real challenges. I will add one thing in the way of a note. Like I said, there will be a link to this document in the description after the show. But it was interesting today that basically Royal Caribbean is saying they have on average 36 crew members left on all their ships. And what that tells me is that the September sailing dates still might be a little bit iffy, because by the time they get crew members back from wherever they are in the world, which means you got to be able to travel, and we can think about how hard it was for them to get all their crew members home. So that's one of the pieces of the challenge. Then they've got to get everything set back up on the ship and ready to sail. And so again, if this stays in that condition for much longer, I think that September may be called into question. The one thing I will say, the one opportunity that's opening up first is going to be river cruises here in the United States. So if we could get states where the virus numbers are going in the right direction, and you weren't worried about catching the virus from just traveling from one state to another, American Queen, Victory Cruise Lines, American Cruise Lines all run river cruises here in the United States. Some of those look amazing. I think I would really like trying one out. But again, the challenge is going to be getting the virus under control. I think that the Florida cruises are in real jeopardy right now, because I don't think any country is going to let people that have sailed out of Florida into their country because the virus has gotten so out of hand. And the same thing with some of the other states. I think Texas's passengers and people that are trying to depart from Texas would be in real would be probably not be allowed off the ship. So there's a lot of challenges that we still got to get ironed out. I so much look forward to a time when we can cruise again. That's my favorite form of vacation. And in fact, I could, if somebody said, do you want to go on a cruise? I'd say yes. And then I might ask them where and who are they? But, I would probably say yes before anything else. Anyway, I appreciate you guys that have been with me tonight. I appreciate the comments. Yeah, and Cheryl, I agree with you. The equipment should be wiped down between users anyway. But having to have somebody from the staff there to do it is going to be a challenge. Oh, Mary said Viking cruises up the Mississippi for the next few years. Yeah, it's a little more expensive per day. But I do think that you get some of them are pretty good value. I just finished training on American Queen and Victory, and the one thing that you don't factor in is it includes all your shore excursions. Because if you do a traditional ocean-going cruise line, you start to add up an excursion in every port, and these are not rinky-dink excursions, but they're really pretty nice excursions. Makes a huge difference. So that would be a factor to look at. Anyway, I appreciate everybody being here tonight. We'll see you next week, and thanks for watching.